Hi, everyone. Our Claim of Value project is on GMOs. My name is Tia.
I'm Sophia.
I'm Maddie.
I'm John.
Our stakeholders are a farmer, an environmentalist, a low-income consumer, and a nutritionist. Let's get started with some background information on GMOs. The Food and Drug Administration states that GMOs, or genetically modified organisms, are plants, animals, or microorganisms that have had its genetic material changed using technology that generally involves the specific modification of DNA, including the transfer of specific DNA from one organism to another.
Our first stakeholder is the common farmer. Farmers all across the world have very close interaction with GMOs and are a direct stakeholder. The first way that GMOs affect farming is through the use of pesticides. With new technology, crops are modified to resist pests internally by creating a protein that prevents the target insect from digesting their food and eventually killing them. Although this modification is effective and deadly to pests, it's non-toxic and unnoticeable to humans, as well as pollinators like bees and even the plant itself. This internal pesticide allows for farmers to use less conventional pesticides, which are harmful for the environment, the farmer, the crops, and even the consumer. Using less pesticides also saves the farmer lots of money from the cost of labor and of applying the chemicals. And as you can see by the graph below, ever since 1996, farmers have been using less and less pesticides because of GMOs. Another important genetic modification in farming is resistance to herbicides and weed killers. Through gene modification, plants are modified to resist the toxins and weed killers and allow the farmer to use them without fear of ruining their crops. This makes herbicides more effective and reduces the need to till the soil to kill weeds. This is better for the environment because tilling soil damages the nutrients within the soil and can release greenhouse gases. This also saves the farmer lots of money from the reduced labor and the expensive fuel. Viruses are also a large threat to farmers, but can be solved through the use of genetically modified crops. Virus-resistant crops are some of the most important GMOs within the farming community because they can prevent the recurrence of serious diseases like late blight pathogen, which is what caused the Irish potato famine. Resistance to deadly viruses also allows for less crop death, more consistency of crop yield, and in turn more financial stability for the farmer. In the graphics, you can see some examples of common viruses that GMOs have prevented from recurring. The biggest benefit to farmers that comes from GMOs is the total increase in yield. Ever since farmers started using GMOs in their farms, the total income of farmers has increased by $40.7 billion. This increase comes from the benefits I talked about earlier. About 42% of this increase comes from the reduced pest and weed damage. And additionally, the other 58% comes from the reduced cost of labor and pesticides. As you can see by the chart, total farm yield has gone up by 21.6%, and the farm profits have gone up by 68.2% since we started incorporating GMOs. On the other hand, the legal side of GMOs can be problematic for farmers. Many companies who produce GMO seeds make the farmers sign a contract when they buy from them, and these contracts can prohibit farmers from reusing seeds that they harvest from their crops, saving seeds for the next season, and even will make them buy annually from these companies and keep buying for a certain amount of years. Aside from the companies that they buy seed from, if GMO farmers cross-pollinate to another farm, they can be liable and forced to pay damages.
Our second stakeholder is an environmentalist, which examines both the direct and indirect effects of GMOs may have on the environment. Environmentalists can be internal stakeholders as they have a say on whether GMOs are safe for the environment and can create change if they find something wrong. Firstly, looking into how GMOs use non-renewable resources, including water, the atmosphere, energy, and fossil fuels, as well as having a reduction in fertilizers, which benefits water quality as well. Many GMOs are engineered to be drought tolerant. This is very beneficial to the environment because fresh water is a scarce resource that is being depleted faster than it can be restored. GMOs also decrease the need for pesticides, herbicides, and insecticide use. According to How Do GMOs Affect the Environment by an unknown author, over the last 25 years, GMOs have reduced pesticide applications by 7.2%, demonstrating that they are having a positive effect on pesticide usage. According to Morgan Chamberlain in The Environmental Impact of Genetically Modified Crops, there has been significant reduction in both insecticide and herbicide use due to GMOs. GMOs can be beneficial to the atmosphere as they reduce greenhouse gases emissions and are more energy efficient. According to Morgan Chamberlain in The Environmental Impact of Genetically Modified Crops, Changes in agricultural practices associated with genetically modified crop use are associated with a reduction in fuel use and a decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. This impact is due primarily to a reduction in spray run, which reduces the fuel-dependent farm equipment. In 2018, these practices reduced fuel use by 920 million liters, which saved 2,456 million kilograms of carbon dioxide. Additionally, GMOs require less fertilizer as they are able to readily absorb phosphorus because it contains an enzyme that can break it down more efficiently than non-GMO plants. And fertilizers can be detrimental to the environment, so less is more. GMOs are widely destructive to genetic diversity. And genetic diversity is crucial to adapting to new environments, as more variation in genes leads to more individuals of a population having favorable traits to withstand harsh conditions. Low genetic diversity, on the other hand, can be very problematic during changing environments, as all individuals will react similarly. If the genetic diversity increases, so will its resistance and resilience, which is its ability to change and recover from damage. GMOs are able to hybridize through a variety of ways, such as wind pollination by insects, etc. Hybridization results in many negative outcomes. Firstly, the hybrid plants could outcompete native plants, which would be detrimental to an ecosystem. The hybrid plants would be able to do so as they have greater fitness, in which they have a better ability of reproducing, causing overgrowth and decreasing genetic diversity. The hybrid plants may not have the same niches as native plants, which could cause the ecosystem to collapse. An example of this is from creeping bent grass, which is the grass used on golf courses, and it's crossbred with a wild species, which caused an outburst of weeds as it became resistant due to the gene. Conversely, hybridization could also be beneficial to biodiversity, as it can add to the genetic diversity if it does not outcompete the native species. Not only do GMOs only affect native plants negatively, but can also affect other non-target organisms. One example of this is between BT corn and monarch butterflies. BT maize pollen was found to be toxic to the monarch butterfly larvae, which caused them to die off. This is also present in many other beneficial organisms, such as ladybugs and grasshoppers. It also affects pests, as I talked about earlier, that develop a resistance to insecticide and herbicides, which causes overgrowth. But overall, when one aspect of biodiversity is destroyed, it can cause an entire ecosystem to collapse.
Our third stakeholder is a low-income consumer. Low-income consumers are external stakeholders into the genetically modified organism debate because they benefit from the low cost of GMOs but do not work with GMOs. The National Public Radio states that nearly 1 in 4 households in America have experienced food insecurity this year. Although this article was written in 2020, the problem still applies as many people continue to be out of work since COVID. Low-income consumers and those out of work depend heavily on having access to food, which means having costs be more affordable. The United States Census Bureau states that the poverty line in the United States in 2021 for one person was $13,788 and $27,740 for a household of 4. The official poverty rate in 2021 was 11.6%, with 37.9 million people in poverty in America. This means that almost 38 million people were unable to acquire enough food to meet their needs. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's most recent figures, in 2021, Americans spent 10.3% of their disposable personal income on food. Low-income consumers support GMOs and appreciate them because they make food more accessible and affordable, according to the Food and Drug Administration. Most GMO crops were built specifically to help farmers, but by doing so, they actually reduce the overall cost to consumers. Not all GMOs were designed to help farmers, though. Some are created just to help with consumer costs. Farming with GMOs is different from farming organic because of their pest and nutrient management strategies, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. GMOs are specifically made to reduce the risk of pesticides and decrease the amount of nutrients necessary for crops to grow. By putting less money, resources, and labor into the farming and production of foods, grocery store prices become significantly reduced in comparison to organically farmed foods. An associate professor at Rutgers University's Department of Agriculture, Food and Resources Economics explains that food prices are rising mainly due to the fact that the agri-food supply chain is currently unable to deliver when and where food is needed due to the shortage of labor, particularly at farm level. Farming organically increases the labor necessary to produce the same yield as non-GMO farming. Food also becomes more affordable and accessible if there are higher yields of the crop. In 2016, a study done at Purdue University found that without GMOs, corn yields would decline by 11%, soybeans would decline by 5%, and cotton would decline by 19%. This would increase prices of corn, soybeans, and many other important crops. The professor and department head of agricultural economics at Purdue University, Jason Lusk, writes that grocery prices rose 12% from November 2021 to November 2022, and grocery prices rose 6.4% over the same time period in 2021. It has been more than 40 years since grocery prices rose at the rate now being experienced. When looking for products to pick and choose from at the grocery store, organic products are the more expensive choice on top of an already expensive market. In research done by the United States Department of Agriculture, researchers found that premiums for the 17 organic products in 2010 ranged from 7% for fresh spinach to 82% for eggs. A low-income consumer does not want to pay more for an already expensive product. In conclusion, low-income consumers already struggle with finding inexpensive food that does not take too much of their paycheck, and GMOs only help them to do that. By being able to produce more crops without much labor, GMOs allow food prices to be significantly reduced, benefiting the low-income consumer.
Next, we have the nutritionist stakeholders' view on GMOs. The nutritionist's main concerns with GMOs were pesticide use and environmental impact. First of all, Jennifer Hazo, a doctor at the Keck Medicine of USC, states that pesticides are substances used to repel, kill, or control animals or plants that are considered to be pests. Nutritionists are concerned with pesticide and GMOs because the health effects of pesticides have been related with conditions such as cancer. Next, nutritionists are concerned with the corporate control over GMOs. Eric Benhay wrote an article called GMO Corpse Power about the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the largest organization in this health practice. Benhay states from the New York Times that a dietitian working on a panel charged with setting policy on GMOs for the Academy contends she was removed for pointing out that 2 of its members had ties to Monsanto, one of the biggest makers of GMOs. Due to this, nutritionists have been conscious of what corporations control GMOs because the largest credible GMO company was corrupt. A common misconception nutritionists deal with about GMOs is that they negatively affect human health. Nutritionists are concerned that GMOs affect the allergenic proteins of genetically modified organisms. This is a misconception because according to the FDA, there are specific allergen tests that scientists have to run when developing GMOs. This is called allergenicity testing, which ensures that allergens aren't transferred from one food to another. Eliza Dunn, an MD, outlines the idea that at least 20 years of data on GMOs have proven that a crop's allergenic protein is not changed when altering the genetic material of that crop. As mentioned briefly, nutritionists have been concerned about GMOs and how they increase the risk of cancer. The FDA states that GMO crops are not changed in ways that would increase the risk of cancer for humans, and the FDA provides an analysis of data by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, which found that patterns of change in cancer rates in the US are similar to Europe and the UK, where people eat less GMO foods. Furthermore, the American Cancer Society also explains that GMOs do not increase nor decrease the chances of getting cancer. Due to this evidence, the concerns that GMOs cause health risks are a myth because there is not sufficient evidence to show an increased chance of allergenic proteins or cancer in GMOs. Nutritionists have recognized that GMOs can combat nutritional deficiencies. Sam Jay, a Master of Public Health nominee in 2018, states that from a nutritional positive standpoint, GMOs have been useful in combating nutritional deficiencies. To back this, Jay explains that golden rice, developed in 2004, satisfies 50% of your daily vitamin A needs per cup. The FDA furthers the idea that there are nutritional benefits to GMOs because GMO soybeans are known to have oils that are healthier than non-GMO soybeans. So do nutritionists recommend GMOs? Since there are no health risks associated with GMOs, nutritionists are not opposed to people consuming them. Instead, the author of The Human Health Benefits from GM Crops, Smith, explains that the enhanced nutritional value in GMOs can improve a person's nutrient intake. Smith also quotes from Hefferon that GM crops have been adopted and are increasing micronutrient availability. Due to this evidence, nutritionists do believe that GMOs can be part of a balanced diet without compromising your health.
We chose cost, sustainability, and health risks as our values. As college students, we chose cost because we understand how food prices can affect what someone chooses to buy at a grocery store. We value sustainability because we live in a generation who understands the upcoming consequences to our environment if we do not take care of it. So we believe it is very important to preserve our natural resources. Lastly, we chose health risks as a value because we want to ensure that the food we consume is safe to eat and does not have any underlying health threats to our health.
Farmers really value cheap costs because when there's cheap prices, the cost of production also goes down. They also like cheap prices because they're also consumers. In terms of sustainability, farmers are fairly neutral. They care about the sustainability of their farms, but they do not necessarily care about the rest of the environment. While farmers do not particularly care for the health of their consumers, they need to produce safe food so they can be sold. This puts them at around a neutral for this value.
As an environmentalist, cost is not a large priority for me. I care more about the environmental effects than the economic factors, as it does not directly affect the environment. Sustainability is extremely important to me because I value it a lot, and GMOs have many effects on the environment. Sustainability is key when it comes to the environment. The health risk of GMOs is not super important to me, but it does still hold some value as the health of the people can affect the environment.
Cost is a large priority for a low-income consumer. They must budget out everything they pay for. Having foods that are inexpensive means that people who do not make a lot of money or do not work can afford food. Low-income consumers do not value sustainability as much as they would value cost by any means. It is not as urgent of a problem to them as food insecurity is. Health risk is not irrelevant to the low-income consumer, but it can be that it is pushed down as a value when cost is a factor.
Nutritionists are neutral about the cost of GMOs because they stand more on whether or not GMOs are beneficial to your health rather than the cost. A nutritionist is similar to a consumer in that the idea that cheaper alternatives can persuade one to buy GMOs over organic or whole foods. The nutritionist's least concern of GMOs is sustainability because nutritionists are more concerned about how GMOs affect your well-being rather than how GMOs affect the longevity of the environment. Nutritionists have a neutral view on the health risks of GMOs because currently there is not any evidence proving that GMOs can harm your body, although as the progression of GMOs and science continues, it is important for nutritionists to research thoroughly on new GMOs when recommending them to the public as healthy.
Values we dismissed include profit, stewardship, and accountability. As consumers, we are more concerned about our own needs and do not prioritize the profitability of GMOs or non-GMOs. Similarly, we dismiss stewardship because we are indifferent towards the companies and industries that control the GMO food productions, as we are not directly affected by them. Lastly, we dismissed accountability because the government has made a baseline of laws and regulations that we support due to the transparency of these policies from the government to the public.
Based on our research and decision matrix, we decided that the farmer presents the strongest case. We share the most values with the farmer because they have the largest influence over cost, sustainability, and health risk in the production of GMOs. We also agree with their overall opinion that GMOs are beneficial to society.